Welcome to Success Weekly with James Tharris, a weekly dose of thought-provoking ideas and helpful tips on improving your mindset. And now, here's your host, James Tharris.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Success Weekly. I'm your host, James Tharris, and today we're going to be talking about another key to success. And this one is a key that a lot of people seem to lose on a regular basis, and I've seen it affect people more than many other things. So what am I talking about today? I'm talking about consistency. Now, the things that I'm talking about in this podcast apply equally to business, to sports, to academics, to relationships, and including your martial arts training. If you're not into martial arts, you don't have any interest in martial arts, it really doesn't matter, because the same things that I'm talking about for martial arts apply to all of those other things and every other thing as well. So consistency is really just doing things on a regular basis, kind of on a set schedule almost. So consistency, for instance, in the realm of eating, is maybe eating consistently 3 times per day for forever. I mean, just as a regular thing. Or exercising. People exercise. If you exercise consistently, you get much better results. Now let's stop and look at that in the realm of exercise, because anybody listening to this either should exercise or is already exercising or used to exercise, and you can see how this consistency works right then and there. If you are, let's say that you go to the gym today and you go work out for 4 hours and you do everything possible. You lift upper body weights, you lift lower body weights, you do all the cardio you can, you go swimming, you take a class, you do all those things, but then you don't go back to the gym for a month. What good is that 4 hours that you did today going to do you? Well, I can tell you right up front, it's going to do you absolutely no good, and it may even do you some negative and some bad by making you feel the pain of not only your muscles, but the pain of you not following through and continuing to do it. See, what happens when we get started on something is we start getting, if it's an exercise, we start getting sore muscles. If we're learning, if we're doing a foreign language, or we're doing something that requires mental strength, we get mentally tired, we get frustrated, and those things lead us to trying to take an extra day or 2 or sometimes 3 off until we recover, and then we get back in and start doing whatever that activity was again. Unfortunately, that's where the inconsistency begins. So the first thing that's important to understand with regards to consistency is not biting off more than we can chew. So for exercise, if I were to tell you that in order to be successful with your weight goals and getting in shape goals, that you had to go to the gym 6 days per week or 7 days per week and spend 4 hours at a time, nobody would get started. And really, you don't need that. There are very few people that need that kind of training, unless they're an Olympic athlete or maybe a UFC fighter that's got their title on the line. The average person doesn't need that kind of exercise. But what they do need is a consistent and doable schedule that they can commit to. So for a martial artist, in this day and age, we expect to see our students twice per week. For our little ninjas, ages 4, 5, and 6, that's going to be about 30 minutes 2 times per week, about 1 hour per week. But if it's done consistently, the child will be exposed to all of the concepts that we are trying to get across to them, such as being more respectful at home, being more respectful at school, taking pride in cleaning their room, taking pride in cleaning their bodies, their teeth, and their hair every day. Things like this. And so if we're doing that on a consistent basis and they're being exposed to the 3 rules of focus with your eyes, focus with your mind, and focus with your body, and then having that message expanded upon and talking about how it can affect that child's schoolwork, their grades, and even their relationships, then it starts to sink in. And if it's done consistently, it does sink in. If it's done inconsistently, it takes a lot longer for that message to sink in. So that might be in a martial arts end of things for a young child. For an older child or an adult even, doing martial arts twice per week, it might be 1 hour each time. So that's 2 hours per week. And then the student should make some time for themselves outside of class as well, and on a consistent basis, maybe practicing 5 minutes. If they're coming to classes Tuesday and Thursday, for instance, maybe making a consistent effort to practicing 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you can devote to Monday and Wednesday each week, so that you're really coming to classes twice a week, but you're also doing some individual practice on your own consistently on Mondays and Wednesdays, the opposite of the days that you'd be attending classes. Now, if we can take this same thought process into just general fitness, the same things apply. Now, it depends on your goals. If your goals are just to maintain the weight that you're at and maintain your health, 2 times per week or 3 times per week is probably good. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for instance. And it's good to put a day of separation in between there if possible. So if you're going to do Monday and Wednesday and Friday, then what could you do Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday to help support your goals for fitness? Maybe you could support those goals by doing some additional reading and studying on the subject of fitness. Maybe you're going to be setting and reviewing your goals on those days. Something you can do consistently to help put yourself in the driver's seat toward your goals, and being consistent about doing it, not just doing it haphazardly here and there. So I've seen it many, many times in my martial arts program where parents will bring their kids in, and then the first 2 to 3 or 4 classes, they're here every time, and then all of a sudden something happens, that something comes up and they're not able to make that next class. And then from there, it seems like it's an uphill battle trying to get that student and that parent back on the bandwagon so that they're consistent again. And what that does then, and for the child, it disrupts their learning, and they start tuning out a little bit more, and it starts to have less of an effect because it's not as consistent. And it's, again, you can go into the medical profession, and what do they tell you as far as taking a drug like amoxicillin for strep throat? I think it used to be something like you take it for 2 weeks every single day, and you have to finish the entire dose before you stop taking it, and if you don't do that, then you can't expect for the strep throat to go away. So they're teaching you to take this medicine consistently. Now, if you go into a doctor's office and they give you a few things that you're supposed to be doing, how many of us ignore the advice and we don't do it? And then we go back and they ask us, well, have you been doing this and that and the other? And we answer with no. Well, there's the reason, Mr. Theris, why you're still having problems in this particular area. So it's the same thing in every area of our lives. Consistency really, it does several things. And so number one is, if you're a consistent person, let's say you're consistent in your parenting. For a parent listening to this and you're trying to get your kids to pay more attention and take you more seriously, you have to be consistent with your disciplinary actions and your behaviors, because that will make your kids believe in you. If you're wishy-washy as a parent and you let your kids get away with things sometimes, and then other times you crack down on them, you're sending a message of inconsistency, and the kids will pick up on that, and they'll know when they can press your buttons and when they shouldn't press your buttons, and really that'll be your own fault for not being consistent. So as for being a parent, consistency is one of the most important things you can do for yourself and for your family. It will make others believe in you. If you are, we're talking about work, and you have coworkers that depend on you, or your boss is depending upon you, and you're consistently early, that sends a message. Now, if you're consistently late, and you always have a good excuse as to why you're late, that also sends a message. That is a message that you are consistently going to be late. If you send the message that you're consistently early, they're going to begin looking at you differently than some of the other employees, and that might even lead to a promotion, or a raise, promotion, or something good. It'll lead to something good. But if you're consistently late, that might eventually lead to you being fired or laid off. If the economy goes south and they're looking to make cuts, think about it. Who are they going to make the cuts to first? The employees that have the better habits, or the employees that have the poor habits? I can assure you they're going to get rid of the people who have the poor habits before they get rid of the other people. So if you are more consistent, you're actually putting yourself in a better position within your company. And that applies to anything and everything. So it makes others believe in you when you're consistent. It also helps to elevate your confidence, because you're getting yourself into a pattern. And when we get into patterns, our mind loves patterns. And so if we get into a pattern of let's say, attending a class, like a martial arts class, Monday and Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday, and every single week you mark off the calendar of those particular times. Let's say you're coming to a 6 o'clock class, and your class is from 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock p.m. Well, you probably want to look at your calendar and mark out 5:30 till 7:30 and give yourself those 2 hours where you don't schedule anything, and no matter what, you don't schedule anything during those particular times. That's what it takes to be consistent. You've got to create the schedule, and then you've got to stick to that schedule and be consistent, and only through consistency are you going to get those results. So again, going back to getting into shape, imagine if I lifted all kinds of weights a day and pumped up my biceps and went home and they were sore for the next 3 or 4 days, and I didn't do anything more for the next 3 weeks. That amount of lifting of the weights that I did in one day absolutely did nothing for me. But if I go Monday and I lift weights, and I don't lift weights that are way too heavy for me, so that I'm going to put myself in a state of pain that I know I'm not going to want to come back again, I slowly build up to it. Let's say I start with 20 pounds and do one set of 10 reps of 20 pounds and see how that makes me feel. Then when I come back in the next time, which would be Wednesday maybe, I would put a day of rest in between, and I would come back Wednesday and then try it again, and I would see how I felt the first time, and maybe this time instead of doubling to 40, I'm going to go from 20 to 25, and I'm going to stick with that one set of 10 reps, and I'm going to start very slow like that, and each time either lift the same amount for 2 times in a row until I get all 10, and then when I get to the point where I can do all 10 2 or 3 times in a row, now I'm going to add 5 pounds or maybe 10 pounds until I can get 5 or 6 or 7 reps out of it. When I can get up to a 7 or 8 reps, then I'm going to maybe add another couple of pounds until the point where I can handle more weight with fewer reps. Now, when I get to more weight with fewer reps, let's say I go from 20 to 50 and I'm able to do all 10 reps, then I would add maybe a second set of 10 reps in there with those 50 before I try adding any more weight. Then that is consistently doing things on a small incremental basis where I'm not adding too much too soon, and I can then gauge how that is affecting my mood and how it's affecting my soreness level in my muscles the next day, and so on and so forth. You can do the same thing with running. If you're going to go out and do cardio and you're going to run, the last thing you want to do is to start out by saying, okay, tomorrow I'm going to wake up and start running 5 miles per day. Instead of that, you want to start out maybe doing Monday through Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you start with a couple of blocks. I'm going to run around my block 2 times or 1 time, and if I do that, the next time I'll add on a second lap, and then a 3rd lap, and then finally you can start setting, I'm going to do 1 mile for this next week. I'm going to do 1 mile, and I'm going to consistently do it, that 1 mile, until I can do it in under 9 minutes or something like that. And then I'm going to increase it from 1 mile to 1.5 miles, and I'm going to consistently do it every day, whether I feel like it or not. See, that's the thing, is a lot of times we start out with a goal, and as soon as our unexpected soreness creeps in, or an unexpected, we get tired and we don't feel like getting up to go do something, those are the things that really destroy our consistency and start making us inconsistent. And you have to recognize that the world's champions in everything, not just sports, but in academics and in life, they have the same desires to want to give up too. They have the same desires to take it easy one night because they're extra tired, or take a night off. But they don't, because they know that if they do, the guy that they're going to be competing against, whether it be in business or whether it be in academics or whether it be in sports or anything else, they know that other guy is going to be pushing it while they're taking a break. And then when it comes time for the game, they're probably not going to perform as well. So that's what motivates them to get up even when they don't feel like it. And that's what creates consistency. See, when you get consistent in a goal, the moment you stop doing it, you take a break off it for a day or two, it should feel like you stopped eating for a day or two. That when it gets to that point, that's when you know that consistency has creeped into your life, and that's a good thing. Until it gets there, you've got to continue to create consistency by forcing yourself to do whatever it is, as long as it's a good thing. Not bad things, but good things. You've got to force yourself to keep doing them until it becomes a habit. And once it's a habit, you will be consistent. Now, just because you gain something, let's say you gain a habit of consistency, doesn't mean that you're going to keep that without doing anything. You still have to maintain it, and that's going to take some work, and that's going to take some mental effort as well, especially on those nights where you're tired or you feel sore. Now, I'll tell you something. I went to China. I've been to China twice, and I've been there to train 10 days consistently, 10 days in a row, one after another. And I can tell you the training in China is very rigorous in comparison to training that we do here in the United States for traditional martial arts programs such as ours. When I got out there, I trained for the first day. Now, each day we paid, I think it was $3,000 to go spend 10 days, and we trained with very high-level Chinese athletes and their coaches. They train for 8 hours a day, so we train for 8 hours a day as well. Now, within that 8 hours, there were a couple of breaks for water or a couple of breaks to go. We did a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that was very consistently. We did those. We took those breaks for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they were at the same time every day. The training was at the same time every day. The breaks were at the same time every day. And by the end of the first day, I was absolutely sore from head to toe. So it was very difficult for me to wake up the next day and want to subject myself to that again for 8 more hours. But what a funny thing happened. When I got to the second day, my body was aching in such pain I didn't feel like doing anything, but I was all of a sudden given orders to do something, and I jumped into action. And within 20 minutes or so, all of the pain left my body. The lactic acid or whatever was making me hurt went away, and it was replaced by a second wind. And that happened again every single day. I would come in, and I would be very sore from the previous day. But once I got into action, a funny thing happened, and all the pain left. And I was able to continuously train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 10 solid days, and I made it through. And I've done that on many occasions where I started to doubt myself that I didn't think I was going to be able to handle this. And it's that consistency that you build it up, and it's there for you. If you're consistent in weightlifting, for instance, your muscles will adapt and they will grow stronger and allow you to lift more, or at the very least maintain what it is you're trying to do on a regular basis. So some people lift weights to gain and bulk up, and other people gain to cut muscles and shred the muscles so that you see the definition. And other people just go to stay in shape, and so they're maybe not lifting as much weights. But if they do it consistently, that's when they get the best benefits out of whatever that activity is. Now, if we're talking academics, that might be studying on a consistent basis, reading on a consistent basis, attending lectures and seminars on a regular basis. Whatever you have to do, getting around and spending consistent time with people who are winners and going where it is that you want to go to in life, that's also consistency. So consistency will give you patterns, and patterns will elevate your confidence. Also, consistency is fantastic for your creativity. When I am working out, when I'm riding my bicycle consistently, that's when I've found that I'm the most creative, is when if I'm doing an elliptical machine for a specific period of time. If I'm doing that maybe for 2 or 3 months in a row, and I get in the habit of running on that elliptical machine, I will get much more creative, especially when I'm on that elliptical machine or I'm on the bicycle. My creative juices start flowing in ways that they don't flow if I'm sitting at home doing nothing. So that's the idea. Being consistent also improves your creativity. And I'll tell you something else. Consistency is way better than goal setting. How many of you listening to this set your New Year's resolution and you set your goal at the beginning of the year to lose weight or to save money or to be nicer or whatever, and where are you at today? Are you any closer toward that goal, or have you already abandoned the goal and you're waiting until January 1st comes around before you start thinking about it again? See, that's what happens to us in a lot of our goals. We set goals for weight loss, we set goals for fitness, we set goals for finances, we set goals for relationships, so I'm going to spend more time with my kids and family, or whatever it is we're talking about. And then life happens, and we don't have time to do the things that we set our goals to do. So that's where consistency comes in, and it's better than goal setting. If you just decide, instead of saying I'm going to lose 50 pounds this year, all you do is instead, I'm going to consistently start doing some cardio 2 to 3 days per week for, let's say, 7 to 14 minutes. You'd be surprised at how much that'll help you. 7 to 14 minutes of good cardio can burn calories faster than a lot of things. In fact, if you do what they call HIIT, high intensity training, high intensity interval training, that's what it's called, which is short bursts for 30 to 60 seconds and then followed by a period of relaxation, followed by another short burst. So let's say that you were on an elliptical machine, for instance, and you set the timer for 7 minutes. First 30 seconds, you just run full out. The next 30 seconds, you take a full break and you're walking again. The next 30 seconds, you run full out. The next 30 seconds, you take a break, and you keep doing that for 7 minutes. Or you can do it for 1 minute full out, and then 2 minutes of rest. 1 minute full out, 2 minutes of rest, 1 minute full out. It doesn't matter the numbers there as long as you're consistent with it and you do what your body will allow you to do and what your mindset will allow you to do. That's consistency, and that will get you much better results than setting this huge goal that you know in the back of your mind you're just not going to be able to do. All right. So if you're consistent, consistency also begets more consistency. Developing a habit is easier to maintain a habit once you've developed it than it is to try to develop a new habit or to restart an old habit. So the old saying that I think it's Newton's physical law or Newton's law of physics, that a body in motion tends to stay in motion and a body at rest tends to stay at rest. That's consistency. That's what he's talking about. So if you're consistently moving, it's going to be very difficult for you to suddenly stop moving. And we're talking exercise here. If you're going to martial arts classes and you're learning, you're growing, you're getting better, you're getting stronger, you're getting faster, you're getting more flexible, and then you stop showing up, the results stop showing up as well. And so that starts to affect us. And if you want to get back on the bandwagon to get those results again, you get back into being consistent, you'll see those results pick up again. All right. Consistency maintains your message to other people as well. So if you're a consistent person, it tells other people that, hey, if he says he's going to be somewhere, you can go to the bank and put money in on that because he'll do it. All right. So consistency maintains your message. Consistency also makes you relevant. As I've said before in the beginning, if you're at work and you're inconsistent, you become irrelevant to your employers very quickly. If you're inconsistent, you become irrelevant to your friends. People don't like other people that aren't consistent in their communications. And if they're supposed to be there and you guys are supposed to be getting together once a week for cards or whatever and you stop showing up, eventually the other friends are going to stop inviting you because it makes you irrelevant. So, but if you are consistent, think about consistency in advertising, for instance. When's the last time you heard or saw an ad for McDonald's? Now, everybody knows that McDonald's exists and everybody can see them when they drive down the street, but McDonald's has consistently been marketing their product on television for 50 or 60 years since they first opened. They're still doing it. So is Pepsi, so is Coke. And why do they do that? Because they know when you get hungry, they want you thinking of McDonald's instead of Burger King. When you get thirsty, Coke wants you thinking about them instead of Pepsi, and vice versa. So consistency makes you relevant. All right. Consistency also, as I've already talked about, it establishes your reputation. Are you a person who's consistent, or are you a person who's inconsistent? Because our reputations do precede us. They do precede us. People talk about us behind our backs, either in a good way or a bad way, and very seldom do they tell it to us directly. But when you leave a room, people will say things and say, "Oh, this person is a very consistent person, and man, I can tell that person's going places." Or they leave the room and they told you all their grand goals, and they say, "Yeah, right. You hear what he said?" We all know that that's going to last about 2 weeks. You've probably had conversations like that yourself about somebody that you know. All right. So consistency also creates accountability. Again, I'm going to use martial arts here. If I know I'm going to expect a student on Monday and Wednesday every week, and I see them on Monday, Wednesday every week, and then suddenly 1 week I don't see them on a Monday or a Wednesday, that's a red flag for me, and I've got to contact that student right away before something else happens, or they get into the habit of missing classes. Otherwise, they're going to stop taking classes. I lose a student, and they lose all of the benefits that they worked so hard for and paid for. So it's in both of our best interest for that student who came to me, by the way, to learn, to continue doing it on a consistent basis. That's where all the benefits are had. I've had students that come in 2 or 3 times per week for 3 or 4 months, and then they're the shooting stars, and all of a sudden I don't see them anymore. And it's not usually just an immediate departure. I'll see them 2 times per week, and then I'll start seeing them once a week, followed by twice a week, followed by once a week, followed by twice a week, followed by once a week, and then they'll miss a week. And then the next week they'll come back to 2 or 3 classes, then they'll miss a week. And then they'll try getting back into 2 or 3 times per week, and they're coming once again, then they're coming twice again, then they're coming once, and they miss another time. very soon they start missing 1 week, and then they start missing 2 weeks, and they start missing 3 weeks, and their intentions are to get back into classes. But usually what happens is the time that they were spending at my school is now filled with something else. They have now taken that Monday, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and instead of coming to my martial arts school, they started going to a friend's house who then introduced them to a volleyball team that they started playing that, and they replaced their martial arts training with the volleyball team or a dance or something else, and it interfered with their ability to continue coming to my classes Monday and Wednesday, which destroyed their consistency, and all of a sudden their skill level starts to drop off, their enthusiasm starts to drop off, and they're gone. And what a shame when somebody has a goal, such a positive goal like becoming a black belt and changing their lives and transforming themselves. They start on the road, and then a mile down the road or 2 miles down the road, they pull off to the side and say, I can't do it anymore, and they make excuses for themselves. Unfortunately, these things become habits. Our excuses, if we make excuses for ourselves, that becomes a habit. And I'll tell you something that I've learned about successful people is they don't make excuses for themselves. They admit when it's their fault. They admit when they're being lazy. They admit when they're making excuses. And they don't accept excuses from themselves, nor do they accept excuses from other people. If this is a high-level company and the employee is late on a regular basis and there's one story after another, well, the employer may sympathize the first 1 or 2 times that person's late, the employee, but if the employee continually comes in late with excuse after excuse, well, that employer is going to look at that and say, hey, I don't know what the problem is, but you're obviously not a good fit for this company, and we have to let you go. We need somebody that we can trust is going to consistently be here Monday through Friday, and they're going to show up for work, which starts at 8 o'clock, not at 8:10, Mr. Jones. It starts at 8 o'clock, and I'm sorry we've given you enough opportunity to demonstrate that your consistency, and it's just not working out. Unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go. That happens a lot more than people would like to let on. All right. Finally, consistency allows for measurement. If I'm consistently coming to, let's say I'm consistently lifting weights, and I start out with 10 pound barbells, and I'm doing curls for my biceps. I consistently do it Monday, Wednesday, Friday each week. I can start charting on a piece of paper or in a little journal of some kind my results. I did 3 sets of 10 pounds, and here's how I felt. Now I can measure that and say, okay, I wonder what would happen if I put 15 pounds on and I did 3 sets. Wow, what happened was when I got to that 3rd set, I couldn't finish. I could only do 2 or 3 of the reps of the last set. So now I can start measuring that and saying, okay, let me go back again, and I'm going to put more effort into it. And maybe I'm going to also look at how much rest I got the night before and some of the foods that I ate the night before and see what kind of results that gets me in being able to finish that last set of 10. And then maybe that just doing that, I'm able to finish that last set of 10 reps, and I've done 3 sets of 10 with 15 pounds. Then I know I've been measuring it, and I can see the results. Now I can then add on more weight, and I can start doing other exercises to build up other areas of the body. That's how it works, guys. And that's the same thing in martial arts. We have a goal-setting system, which is called a martial arts belt. And in our school, those are the students can test for them once every 3 months. But in between that, so about 6 weeks into a semester, a student then has what they call a midterm exam, and that's where it's like a progress check, and they will earn little pieces of tape on their belt that indicate what they know, and then the ones that are missing are what they need to work on. So it also helps to promote more consistency in getting that student back here. And I'll tell you something, it's those times, it's the midterm exam and the final exam test weeks that we get the biggest response out of our students, and as far as their motivation goes and their willingness to listen and learn. Something happens there because there's something on the line, and that's how you can also help your consistency, is put something on the line, like such as this. Okay, I'm going to start running around the block, one time around the block 6 days per week this week, and I'm going to do it for 2 weeks, let's say. And at the end of the 2 weeks, if I consistently do that, here's going to be my reward. At the end of those 2 weeks, if I've done it every single day, didn't miss a single day, no excuses, then I'm going to allow myself to go down to Ben & Jerry's, and I'm going to allow myself to have as many ice cream cones as I possibly can eat that day. But it's just going to be a one-day deal, and it's going to be a one-time reward for your doing that. And then you sit down and you reassess your goals and reset them, and you say, okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to do the very same thing over the next 2 weeks, but this time it's going to be 4 laps And if I get there, then I'll maybe if ice cream's your thing, I'm going to go back to Ben & Jerry's and I'm going to do the very same thing. And I can only do that if I'm consistent in my goals over the next 2 weeks. So you set up a reward system for yourself, and you also make it painful for yourself if you don't do it. All right, and so maybe that might be like the swear jar is kind of an example of how you train your consistency. So if you put a swear jar in your house, that means anybody who says a bad word has to put in a nickel or a dollar every time they say something, whatever, and people around you are allowed to remind you that you did it, and you have to have some pain of finding the money and putting it in there to remind you how much you're not doing. And then, of course, every time you go a week without doing it, maybe you get to take $1 out. I don't know. You have to decide what the rewards and the disciplinary actions are going to be if you're not consistent. But that's what it takes. If you're going to be consistent, you've got to start looking at it as a goal setting. And as I said before, consistency is better than goal setting. It's far better than goal setting. But you still have to set some goals even with your consistency. All right? So if you've been inconsistent in your health, you've been inconsistent in your fitness, you've been inconsistent at work, if you've been consistently late, if you're a person who consistently shows up late everywhere you go, which, by the way, is a sign of disrespect to whoever it is you're showing up late for. If you're consistently showing up late, that person is going to feel disrespected by you. So that's a good thing to get rid of, is developing the habit of, what do they call it? Starts with a P, punctuality. Developing a habit of punctuality and being consistently punctual. Always being early versus always showing up late. There's no such thing as fashionably late, guys. You're either early, you're on time, or you're late. And really, if you're on time, in my book, you're late. If my class starts at 6:50 or 7 p.m., my class starts at 7 o'clock p.m., and you show up at 7 p.m., you're already late because you've got to get your attendance card, you've got to get your mind into the game, and we're starting we're just jumping right into things, and you've already missed 5 minutes of prep time. So you've got to start learning to be early to things. And so these are things I teach in my classes to my students. Everything you've heard on these podcasts and everything you will hear on these podcasts are things that I'm going to be teaching to my students and talking to my students about. Now notice in here that not a single place in any of my podcasts did I tell you how to place your arm for a better block, or how to throw a punch harder, or how to stretch and get more flexibility. None of my podcasts are like that, and that's because those things are easier to figure out. There's tons of information out there that can get you that information. But the information I'm giving you here and that I give to my students in my classes, this is what we need. We need to have somebody consistently reminding us of the things that we already know. I'm sure that if you're listening to this, you already know that consistency is important in your life if you're going to be successful, and that being inconsistent is taking away from your success. I'm sure that you already know that. But having somebody like myself remind you of this on a regular basis and doing it consistently can make all the difference in the world. One of the things that one of my mentors many years ago said, and I still use this on a regular basis, is that even champions need to be reminded. Even champions need to be reminded. So anybody, let's say Michael Jordan was playing basketball at his height, I guarantee that that his coaches and some of the players told him things that he probably needed to continue or keep working on or get back to working on, and doing it consistently, game in and game out. And that's one of the reasons why he was able to stay on the top of his game for so long. And same thing with Mike Tyson. Now, Mike Tyson was a phenom in the boxing world. He was like the Michael Jordan of boxing, but there came a time where he became less consistent. And that's when he got married, by the way. When he got married, he started to replace his boxing training with whatever else he was doing. And that took away from his ability to remain dangerous, and we all know what happened. If you don't, look up, find out about his story. It's a very interesting one, and I'm sure he would be the first person to tell you that part of his problem with his staying on top and making a comeback was his consistency or lack thereof. So consistency is really everything, guys. And if you're not consistent, I'd like to charge you to be consistent. And that's really all I've got for you this week. So until next week, this is James Tharis saying be consistent and be successful.
That's all for this week. Tune in next week for another episode of Success Weekly. Do you have an idea you'd like James to talk about in an upcoming episode? Post your comments and be sure to share this podcast with friends.